Hello everyone. Before this video begins, I need to speak candidly with you for a moment. This isn't the message I had hoped to deliver, but it's the situation I find myself in, and I'm not going to hide the facts. This will be the final video I'm able to publish until February. I wish circumstances were different, but they aren't. YouTube has revoked monetization from Revenge with Jake, and once that occurs, the entire operation comes to a standstill. I'm unable to submit a new application until March unless they reverse the decision, and I have no expectation of that happening. These stories require considerable time and effort to produce. Without that revenue, sustaining the release schedule I've maintained over the past year simply isn't feasible. I need to step back, reassess the situation, and restructure things behind the scenes if this channel is going to have any viability going forward. And I'll be candid with you. I'm frustrated. I'm disappointed. And quite honestly, the entire situation feels unjust. I adhered to every guideline. I ensured all content was original. I took care that every detail complied with YouTube's policies. Meanwhile, I observed channels publishing recycled material, questionable content, and hastily assembled productions, and they retain their monetization without consequence. To see this channel, built from the ground up and handled with integrity, subjected to this outcome, it's difficult to accept. It feels as though operating by the rules ultimately worked to my disadvantage. However, as reluctant as I am to step away, it's necessary. I need time to reorganize the workflow, address structural issues, and rebuild this project in a manner that's genuinely sustainable. I have no intention of abandoning it. The goal is to return in February and continue developing Revenge with Jake as it was meant to be developed. If you're wondering how to support the channel during this hiatus, here's what I'd suggest. Remain subscribed and enable notifications. That's the most reliable way to ensure you're informed the moment new content resumes in February. One additional matter worth noting. Over the coming weeks, I'll be removing the existing videos as part of this transition. If there are stories you'd like to revisit, now is the time to do so. Once they're taken down, they'll remain unavailable until the rebuild is complete. I appreciate your continued presence here. I appreciate the support, the comments, and the loyalty you've shown. This community has demonstrated real integrity, and that's a significant part of why I'm committed to restoring this channel properly. For now, I hope you enjoy the final video of Revenge with Jake. And once again, thank you for being here. Let's stay close friends after we separate. We owe each other that much. Those were Brooke's exact words. She said them while sitting across from me at our kitchen table in Omaha, her hands wrapped around a coffee mug like she was delivering good news. Like friendship was some kind of consolation prize she was graciously offering. My name is Jake. I was 37 years old working as a project manager at Iron Vale Freight, a regional logistics company that handled shipping routes across the Midwest. I had spent 12 years with Brooke, 12 years of building something I thought was solid, and in under 10 minutes she reduced all of it to a proposal for continued contact. I agreed. I don't know why. Maybe because I was still in shock. Maybe because I thought it would make things easier, or maybe because a part of me wasn't ready to accept that she was really done. Either way, I nodded and said, "Sure, we can do that." The divorce paperwork moved faster than I expected. Brooke had already consulted a lawyer weeks before that conversation, something she neglected to mention until the documents arrived. She got the house. I got the truck and half of our savings, which wasn't much after she'd borrowed from it over the years. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment near the warehouse district. It smelled like fresh paint and old carpet. I told myself it was temporary. For the first month, the friendship thing seemed manageable. We texted occasionally. She asked how I was settling in. I asked if she needed help with the lawnmower since it always jammed in the fall. Normal stuff. Civil. But then the calls started. First, it was her car. The battery died at a grocery store parking lot on a Tuesday night. She called me instead of roadside assistance. I drove 20 minutes to jump it. She thanked me with a wave and drove off before I could even put the cables away. Then, it was the water heater. Then, a problem with the back door lock. Then her laptop wouldn't connect to the printer. Each time I showed up, each time I fixed it, and each time she treated it like I was doing exactly what I was supposed to do. The last one was different. It was a Friday night, almost 11. She called crying because she'd had a fight with her sister and needed someone to talk to. I sat on my couch, still in my work boots, and listened for over an hour. When I finally hung up, I realized something. I wasn't her friend. I was her backup plan, and she hadn't even noticed the difference. Brooke and I met in our mid-20s at a trade expo downtown. She worked for a small marketing firm that was promoting some tool brand I can't even remember. I was there representing the freight company, handing out brochures no one read. We ended up at the same coffee stand during a break and talked for 40 minutes. She laughed at my bad jokes. I thought that meant something. We got married 2 years later. Small ceremony. Her parents paid for most of it, which she reminded me of more than once over the years. I didn't mind at first. I figured we were building something together, so who cared who wrote which check? I worked long hours. Brooke worked when she felt like it. She bounced between jobs every year or two, always blaming management or coworkers or the toxic culture. I never pushed back. I told myself she was still figuring things out. I covered the mortgage when she was between paychecks. I paid for her car repairs, her gym memberships, her weekend trips with friends. Looking back, I can see the pattern. But when you're in it, you don't. You just keep moving forward because stopping feels like giving up. The cracks started showing about 2 years before she asked for the divorce. She stopped asking about my day, stopped laughing at my jokes, stopped pretending to be interested in anything I had to say. I chalked it up to stress, to routine, to the slow erosion that happens in any long-term relationship. But then I noticed her phone buzzing at odd hours. She started going out more, always vague about where or with whom. I asked once, and she snapped at me so hard I didn't ask again. By the time she sat me down for that let's be friends conversation, I wasn't surprised. Hurt, yes, but not surprised. What surprised me was how quickly she expected things to go back to normal, like the divorce was just a change of address, not a change of everything. One night, a few weeks after I moved out, I was eating dinner alone in my apartment when my phone buzzed. It was Brooke asking if I could swing by to help her move a dresser to the guest room. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "I'm busy tonight." It was the first time I had said no, and for some reason, it felt like the first honest thing I had done in years. The shift didn't happen all at once. It was more like waking up slowly after years of sleepwalking. After that first no, I started paying attention to how often Brooke reached out and why. It was never just to check in. There was always an ask attached. Money for an unexpected bill. A ride to the airport because her car was in the shop. Advice on how to handle her landlord after she moved into a rental. She never called to see how I was doing. She called because she needed something. I stopped answering every time. I let calls go to voicemail. I replied to texts hours later instead of immediately. And every time I did, her tone shifted. First confusion, then irritation, then guilt trips disguised as concern. I thought we were going to stay close. She texted one night after I declined to help her assemble a bookshelf. "This doesn't feel like friendship, Jake." I read that message 3 times. Then I put my phone down and went for a walk. She was right about one thing. It didn't feel like friendship, because it never was. It was me continuing to serve a role she no longer wanted to officially fill. Husband duties without the title. Support without the commitment. I was supposed to keep giving while she kept taking. That's when I ran into Audrey. Audrey had been Brooke's best friend since college. They had roomed together, traveled together, and stayed close even after Brooke moved to Omaha to be with me. Audrey lived about 40 minutes outside the city and worked as a physical therapist at a rehabilitation clinic near the river. She was kind, direct, and never made me feel like I had to perform. I bumped into her at a hardware store on a Saturday afternoon. I was buying light bulbs. She was picking out paint samples for her living room. We talked for a few minutes, and she mentioned she had heard about the divorce. She didn't pry. She just said she was sorry and that if I ever needed someone to talk to, she was around. A week later, I texted her. We met for coffee, then dinner, then a walk along the riverfront that lasted until the sun went down. It wasn't romantic at first. It was just easy. She listened when I talked. She asked questions and actually waited for the answers. She didn't look at her phone every 5 minutes or steer the conversation back to herself. By the third month, something had changed. I wasn't just healing from the divorce. I was starting to feel like myself again. When Brooke found out I was seeing someone, she didn't seem bothered. She assumed it was a stranger, someone she didn't know. She even joked about it during one of her calls. But when she found out it was Audrey, everything changed. The first sign that Brooke was unraveling came on a Wednesday evening. I had just gotten home from work when my phone rang. Her name flashed on the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. "Jake, I need you to come over," she said. Her voice was strained, like she had been crying. "The sink is leaking and there's water everywhere. I don't know what to do." I paused. "Did you call a plumber?" "I don't have the money for a plumber right now. Can you just come help me, please?" I sighed and rubbed my forehead. "Brooke, I'm not your handyman anymore. You need to call someone." There was a long silence on the other end. Then her tone shifted. "I thought we were friends, Jake. Friends help each other. That's what this is supposed to be." I leaned against my kitchen counter and stared at the ceiling. Friends don't call at all hours expecting the other person to fix their problems. That's not friendship. That's convenience. She scoffed. "So what? You're just going to abandon me? After everything we went through?" "You ended the marriage, Brooke, not me. I'm not abandoning you. I'm moving on." She hung up without another word. Over the next few weeks, the calls became more frequent and more demanding. Her tone oscillated between pleading and accusatory. One night she needed money for a vet bill because her cat got sick. Another night she needed someone to talk to because her new job wasn't working out. Each time she framed it as a test of our friendship. Each time, I declined. "I don't understand what happened to you," she said during one particularly heated call. "You used to care. You used to be there for me." "I was your husband," I said. "That's why I was there. But you didn't want a husband. You wanted out. So I'm out. That doesn't mean you stop being a decent person." I let that one sit for a moment, then I said, "I am being decent, Brooke. I'm being decent to myself for the first time in years." She didn't have a response to that. The truth was, she had never considered what our separation actually meant. In her mind, the divorce was just a legal formality, a way to free herself from the title without losing the benefits. She wanted independence without accountability, freedom without consequence, and for a while I had let her have it. But not anymore. The last straw came when she showed up at my apartment unannounced one Saturday morning. She knocked on the door like she still had a right to be there. When I opened it, she pushed past me and started pacing the living room. "I need $300, she said. "My rent is due and I'm short." I stood by the door, arms crossed. "I'm not giving you money, Brooke. This is ridiculous. We were married for over a decade. You owe me." I shook my head slowly. "I don't owe you anything. The divorce settled that." She stared at me like I was a stranger, and maybe, in that moment, I was. It took me a while to understand what Brooke actually believed. She wasn't playing games. She wasn't being manipulative in the traditional sense. She genuinely thought I owed her something permanent. In her mind, 12 years of marriage created a debt that couldn't be erased. She had given me her time, her presence, her attention, and in return I was supposed to give her security, support, and stability for the rest of her life. The divorce didn't cancel that debt. It just restructured it. I realized this during a conversation with Audrey one night. We were sitting on her back porch watching the stars come out over the trees. I had just finished telling her about Brooke's latest demand, and she was quiet for a long moment. "She doesn't see you as a person," Audrey finally said. "She sees you as a resource, and resources don't get to say no." That hit me harder than I expected. Audrey had known Brooke for years. They had been close once, but over time Audrey had started pulling away. She told me about the times Brooke had borrowed money and never paid it back. The times she had canceled plans at the last minute because something better came up. The times she had made everything about herself, even when Audrey was going through something difficult. I tried to set boundaries, Audrey said, but she didn't respect them, so I stopped expecting her to. I nodded slowly. I never set any boundaries, not once. That's not your fault. You were trying to make it work. I was trying to keep the peace. That's not the same thing. Audrey reached over and took my hand. You're allowed to want more than peace, Jake. You're allowed to want happiness. That conversation changed something in me. I stopped feeling guilty for saying no. I stopped second-guessing my decisions. I stopped wondering if I was being too harsh or too cold. Brooke had made her choice. She had chosen to leave. And now, I was making mine. The next time she called, I didn't answer. The time after that, I blocked her number. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about hurting her. It was about finally putting myself first, something I hadn't done in over a decade. Audrey and I grew closer. We spent weekends together. We cooked meals, took drives, talked about things I hadn't talked about with anyone in years. She didn't need me to fix her problems. She didn't expect me to be her safety net. She just wanted to be with me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was enough. But I knew it wouldn't last forever. Brooke would find out eventually. She always did. And when she did, the illusion of friendship would shatter completely. Brooke found out about Audrey and me through a mutual friend. Someone had seen us at a restaurant near the river holding hands across the table. Word traveled fast. She called me 17 times in 1 hour. I didn't pick up. Then she showed up at my apartment again, this time with tears streaming down her face. Audrey? She said, her voice cracking. Of all people, Jake, my best friend. I stood in the doorway, not letting her inside. She was your friend, and she's a good person. She's a traitor, and so are you. I shook my head. She didn't betray you, Brooke. She moved on, just like I did. Brooke's face twisted. You did this to hurt me. That's the only explanation. Not everything is about you, I said quietly. I met someone who treats me well. Someone who actually sees me. I'm not going to apologize for that. She stood there, trembling. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I gave you everything, she whispered. No, you didn't, I said. You took everything, and when there was nothing left to take, you left. She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For the first time since I had known her, Brooke was speechless. I stepped back and closed the door. Over the next few weeks, she tried everything. She called Audrey, screaming accusations and threats. Audrey blocked her without a second thought. She tried reaching out to my family, painting herself as the victim. My sister saw through it immediately. She even posted vague messages on social media about betrayal and fake friends, hoping for sympathy. But sympathy didn't come. People who knew us, who had watched our marriage crumble, started reaching out to me instead. They said they were glad I had found someone. They said they had always thought Brooke treated me poorly. They said they were proud of me for walking away. I didn't need validation, but it helped. Audrey and I kept building our life together. We moved in together by the end of the year. A small house near her clinic with a backyard big enough for a garden. I started cooking again, something I hadn't done since the early days of my marriage. I picked up woodworking on weekends. I felt like myself again. And Brooke? She faded into the background. She stopped calling, stopped showing up, stopped trying to insert herself into my life. I heard through the grapevine that she had moved to Kansas City for a new job, that she was struggling to make ends meet, that her friendships had dried up one by one, each person eventually realizing what I had realized too late. She never apologized. I never expected her to. The last time I saw Brooke was at a coffee shop downtown, almost a year after the divorce was finalized. I was there with Audrey, picking up drinks before a weekend hike. Brooke was sitting alone at a corner table, staring at her phone. She looked up as we walked in. Her face went pale. I didn't say anything. Neither did Audrey. We ordered our drinks and waited by the counter. Brooke stood up and walked over. She looked thinner than I remembered. tired. Her eyes darted between me and Audrey like she was trying to decide who to blame. "I hope you're happy," she said. Her voice was flat. I nodded once. "I am." She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something else, something cutting, something final. But she didn't. She just turned and walked out, leaving her coffee on the table. Audrey squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I watched Brooke disappear through the front door. "Yeah," I said. "I really am." That moment stayed with me for a while. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. I had spent so many years worrying about Brooke's feelings, her moods, her needs. I had bent myself into shapes I didn't recognize just to keep her satisfied, and none of it had ever been enough. Now, standing in that coffee shop with Audrey beside me, I realized I didn't owe Brooke anything. Not my time, not my guilt, not even my attention. She had asked to stay friends because she thought friendship came with the same benefits as marriage. She thought I would always be there, waiting in the wings, ready to catch her when she fell. But friendship doesn't work that way. Not real friendship. And what she wanted was never friendship at all. As for Brooke, her life continued to unravel in the months that followed. She burned through jobs and relationships, each one ending the same way. People eventually saw what I had seen too late. She lost her apartment in Kansas City and had to move back in with her parents. The last I heard, she was working part-time at a retail store, still blaming everyone else for her problems. I didn't celebrate her misfortune, but I didn't mourn it either. Audrey and I got engaged the following spring, a quiet proposal on her back porch under the same stars where she had first helped me see the truth. She said yes before I even finished the question. I spent 12 years giving everything I had to someone who never appreciated it, but in the end I found someone who did, and that made every hard choice worth it. Useless. Completely useless. Vanessa's voice echoed through the auditorium like a gunshot. 300 parents turned to look. Some pretended they didn't hear. Most didn't bother pretending. My name is Rupert. I was 32 years old, standing in the back row of the Tucson Community Arts Center, holding my daughter's costume bag while my wife tore me apart in front of every parent, teacher, and child in the building. All because I forgot Ivy's ballet shoes. The shoes were in the car, 40 feet away. I'd already texted Vanessa that I was going to grab them, but she needed the audience. She always needed the audience. "One job," she continued, her voice carrying that theatrical disappointment she'd perfected over 6 years of marriage. "I asked you to do one simple thing and you couldn't even manage that. What is wrong with you?" I didn't respond. I'd learned years ago that responding only made it worse. So I stood there, absorbing it, feeling the heat climb up the back of my neck while strangers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I worked as a Finnish carpenter. 12-hour days building custom cabinets for high-end homes across the city. My hands were calloused. My back ached most nights. I was good at my job, respected by the contractors who hired me, trusted to do quality work without supervision. But at home, I was apparently incapable of remembering a pair of pink satin shoes. Ivy appeared at the edge of the stage curtain, her small face crumpled with confusion. She was 5. She didn't understand why Mommy was yelling at Daddy in front of everyone. She just knew it felt wrong. I met her eyes and tried to smile, tried to tell her without words that everything was fine, that this was normal. But it wasn't normal. I knew that. I'd known it for a long time. I walked out to the parking lot, retrieved the shoes, and brought them backstage without saying a word. Vanessa was already there, coaching Ivy on her entrance like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just publicly dismantled me in front of 300 strangers. As I handed over the shoes, Vanessa didn't look at me, didn't thank me, just took them and waved me away like I was the help. I found my seat again and watched my daughter dance. She was beautiful, graceful in that clumsy way 5-year-olds are, her tongue poking out in concentration as she tried to remember her steps. When the recital ended, I noticed the ballet teacher standing near the side exit. She was watching me. Not with pity exactly. Something else. something that made me uncomfortable, like she'd seen something I wasn't ready to admit. Vanessa and I met at a friend's barbecue when I was 25. She was bright, confident, quick with a joke. I was quiet, steady, the kind of guy who showed up early and stayed late to help clean up. She said she liked that about me, said I was reliable. Looking back, I think reliable was just another word for controllable. The first few years were good, or at least I thought they were. We got married, bought a small house in a neighborhood with good schools, and had Ivy. I worked hard. Vanessa stayed home with the baby, which made sense at the time. She said she wanted to be present for those early years. What I didn't realize was how quickly her presence would become authority, and how quickly my role would shrink from partner to subordinate. It started small. Comments about how I loaded the dishwasher wrong. Sighs when I bought the wrong brand of milk. Eye rolls when I suggested weekend plans that didn't align with what she'd already decided. Then it got louder. She started correcting me in front of friends, laughing at my opinions, telling stories about my mistakes like they were entertainment. Rupert tried to assemble the crib himself, she'd say at dinner parties, shaking her head. I had to call my dad to come fix it. Honestly, I don't know what he'd do without me. Everyone would laugh. I'd smile along, pretending it didn't sting. But it stung. My dad worked construction for 40 years. He taught me how to build things, how to measure twice and cut once, how to take pride in a job well done. He never belittled my mom, not once. Even when they disagreed, he treated her with respect. I thought that was how marriage worked. Over time, I stopped sharing my thoughts, stopped making suggestions, stopped trying to be heard. It was easier to just agree, to nod, to disappear into the background of my own life. My sister Leah noticed. She'd ask if everything was okay, and I'd tell her it was fine. What else could I say? That my wife thought I was an idiot? That I dreaded coming home most days? Some things are too hard to admit out loud. The night of the recital wasn't the worst thing Vanessa had ever done. But something about the location, the public setting, Ivy's frightened face, the silence of all those watching parents, made it different. Maybe it was the fact that someone else finally saw it clearly. The ballet teacher's name was Claire. She'd been teaching Ivy for 8 months. Quiet, professional, patient with the kids. I didn't know much about her beyond that. But she knew something about me now, and that terrified me. After the recital, parents flooded the lobby, collecting flowers and congratulating dancers. Vanessa was in the middle of it, accepting compliments about Ivy's performance like she'd choreographed it herself. I stayed near the back, holding Ivy's costume bag, waiting to be told it was time to leave. That's when Claire approached. She moved quietly like she was trying not to startle me. "Mr. Rupert, do you have a moment?" I nodded, surprised she knew my name. She led me to a quieter corner near the water fountains. Her expression was calm, but there was something underneath it, something careful. "I saw what happened earlier," she said. "In the auditorium." I felt my shoulders tighten. It was nothing, just a misunderstanding. It wasn't nothing. Her voice was gentle but firm, and it wasn't a misunderstanding. I didn't know how to respond. No one had ever called it out before, not directly. Claire glanced toward the lobby where Vanessa was laughing with another mother. Then she looked back at me. "Can I tell you something?" I nodded again. She took a breath. "I was married to a man like that once, charming in public, different behind closed doors. It took me 8 years to realize the truth." She paused. 9 words changed everything for me. "What were they?" She met my eyes. "Love should never make you feel this small." I felt the words land somewhere deep in my chest, a place I'd been protecting for years, a place I'd convinced myself didn't matter. "I'm not trying to tell you what to do," Claire continued. "I just recognized something tonight, something I wish someone had said to me sooner." Before I could respond, Vanessa's voice cut across the lobby. "Rupert, we're leaving. Stop making people wait." Claire gave me a small nod. "Take care of yourself." I walked back to my family in a daze. Vanessa barely glanced at me as we headed to the car. Ivy held my hand, chattering about how she almost forgot the twirl, but then remembered at the last second. I loaded them both in, started the engine, and drove home in silence. That night, after Ivy was asleep and Vanessa was watching television, I sat on the back porch and stared at the sky. Love should never make you feel this small. I'd spent 6 years shrinking, apologizing for things that weren't my fault, accepting treatment I never would have tolerated from a stranger. Something cracked open in me that night. Not anger exactly, just clarity. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew I couldn't keep living like this. Not anymore. The next few weeks I paid closer attention. Not to Vanessa's words, I'd memorized those long ago, but to the patterns underneath them. The way she spoke to me when we were alone versus when others were watching. The way she smiled at strangers while barely acknowledging me. The way everything I did was either wrong or not enough. I started writing things down, not to build a case, just to see it clearly. Dates, comments, situations. A record of what my life had actually become. The list grew faster than I expected. One Thursday evening I made dinner. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, Ivy's favorite mashed potatoes. I set the table, poured drinks, waited. Vanessa walked in, glanced at the spread and sighed. "You used the wrong plates," she said. "These are for every day. We have guests coming this weekend. We're not having guests tonight. That's not the point." She set down her purse. "The point is you don't think. You never think." I felt the old familiar impulse to apologize, to smooth it over, to make peace. Instead, I said, "I made dinner. A simple thank you would be nice." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "I said thank you would be nice, that's all." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. In 6 years, I'd never pushed back, not once. "What's gotten into you?" Her voice sharpened. "You've been acting strange lately, distant, moody." "I'm not moody. I'm just asking for basic respect." The word hung in the air. Respect. Something foreign to our household. Vanessa laughed, not a warm laugh, the kind meant to make someone feel stupid. "Respect?" She shook her head. "You want respect? Then earn it. Do something worth respecting." She walked past me, took a plate to the living room, and turned on the television. Subject closed. I ate dinner with Ivy at the table. She talked about her day at kindergarten, about a caterpillar her class was watching, about how she wanted to learn to ride a bike. I listened. I smiled. I tried not to let her see what was breaking inside me. After dinner, I cleaned the kitchen alone. Vanessa didn't help. She never did. I thought about Claire's words again. Love should never make you feel this small. She was right, and I was done pretending otherwise. The next day, I called my sister Leah, told her I needed to talk. Really talk. She drove over during her lunch break and sat with me in my workshop behind the house. "I think my marriage is over," I said. Leah didn't look surprised. "I've been waiting for you to say that for 3 years." It hurt to hear, but it also told me something important. I wasn't crazy. Other people saw it too. They'd just been waiting for me to see it myself. Leah and I talked for 2 hours that afternoon. She told me things I'd refused to hear before. How our mom had noticed the way Vanessa spoke to me at family dinners. How my friends from work had asked if everything was okay at home. How even Ivy had mentioned once that Mommy yelled at Daddy a lot. Everyone knew. Everyone except me. Or maybe I knew too. I just didn't want to admit it. That weekend I started researching. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. The library had books on relationships, communication, emotional patterns. I checked out 3 and read them in the shop between projects. What I found was disturbing. The behaviors Vanessa exhibited, the public humiliation, the constant criticism, the dismissal of my thoughts and feelings, had a name: emotional abuse. I'd never thought of it that way. Abuse was physical. Abuse was something that happened to other people, but the descriptions matched perfectly. The isolation from friends and family, the gradual erosion of self-worth, the way the victim starts to believe they deserve the treatment. I'd been living it for 6 years. The next Tuesday, I ran into Claire at the grocery store. Ivy had just finished her weekly lesson, and Vanessa had sent me to pick up supplies for a dinner party she was hosting. Claire recognized me first. "How are you doing?" I hesitated. "Better, I think. Still figuring things out." She nodded. "That's the hardest part, seeing clearly after years of fog." We stood in the cereal aisle, two people who barely knew each other, connected by something neither of us chose. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Of course." "When you left your husband, how did you know it was the right decision?" Claire considered the question. I asked myself one thing. Would I want my daughter to stay in a relationship like this? The answer was no. That made everything clear. I thought about Ivy, about what she was learning by watching us, about the model of marriage we were giving her. The answer hit me like a wave. I wouldn't want Ivy to stay, not in a million years. I thanked Claire and finished my shopping in silence. But my mind was made up. That night I started looking for an apartment. Nothing fancy, just somewhere safe, somewhere quiet, somewhere Ivy and I could exist without walking on eggshells. Vanessa noticed the change in me. She couldn't pinpoint it, but she felt it. "You've been disappearing a lot lately," she said one evening. "Where do you go?" "Just clearing my head." "Clearing your head from what?" I didn't answer. Some things weren't worth explaining. I found a 2-bedroom apartment near Ivy's school. The landlord was a retired teacher who seemed kind and didn't ask too many questions. I put down a deposit and kept the keys in my workshop. Next, I called a family lawyer. Her name was Patricia, and she specialized in custody cases involving emotional abuse. I told her everything. The public humiliation, the constant criticism, the way Vanessa controlled every aspect of our lives while making me feel responsible for her unhappiness. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Document everything. Dates, times, witnesses if possible. The more evidence you have, the stronger your case." I'd already started. My notebook was filling up. Over the next 3 weeks, I gathered what I needed. Text messages where Vanessa called me worthless. Voicemails where she screamed at me for minor mistakes. Statements from my sister and 2 co-workers who'd witnessed her behavior at various events. I also started spending more time with Ivy, teaching her to ride a bike in the park, reading to her before bed, making sure she knew beyond any doubt that her father loved her. Vanessa noticed the increased attention and immediately resented it. "You're spoiling her," she said one afternoon. "She's going to expect this kind of treatment all the time." Is that a bad thing? For a child to expect love from her parents? Vanessa's jaw tightened. "Don't get smart with me." But I wasn't backing down anymore. The hardest part was keeping everything hidden. Vanessa controlled the household finances. She monitored my phone. She questioned every purchase, every absence, every deviation from routine. I learned to be careful, used cash, created a separate email account, met with Patricia during lunch breaks instead of after work. It felt strange, living a double life in my own home, planning an escape while pretending everything was normal. But I thought about Ivy, about what she deserved, about the kind of father I wanted to be. One evening, Vanessa found a receipt I'd forgotten to throw away. A deposit for the apartment. Her face went pale, then red. "What is this?" I didn't lie. There was no point anymore. "I'm leaving, Vanessa. I'm taking Ivy and I'm leaving." She laughed, the same dismissive laugh she always used. "You? Leave me? Where would you even go? You can't survive without me. I already found a place. I already have a lawyer." For the first time in 6 years, Vanessa had nothing to say. I walked past her, grabbed my jacket, and drove to my sister's house. The war was about to begin. The custody hearing took place on a Wednesday morning. Vanessa arrived with her mother and a lawyer who looked expensive. She wore a navy dress and a confident smile, clearly expecting to win. Patricia presented our case methodically. The documented incidents, the witness statements, the pattern of emotional abuse that had lasted 6 years. Vanessa's lawyer tried to paint me as unstable, a man going through some kind of crisis. But the evidence was overwhelming. The turning point came when Patricia played a voicemail Vanessa had left me 2 months earlier. Her voice, high and vicious, filled the courtroom. "You are worthless. You are nothing without me. If you ever try to take Ivy from me, I will destroy you. I will make sure everyone knows what a pathetic excuse for a man you are." Vanessa's face drained of color. Her mother looked away. The judge paused the recording and looked at Vanessa directly. "Is this your voice?" She couldn't deny it. The evidence was clear. The ruling came 3 weeks later. Primary custody to me. Supervised visitation for Vanessa, pending a psychological evaluation. When I received the call from Patricia, I was in my new apartment, painting Ivy's bedroom. Light purple, her favorite color. I sat on the floor and let myself feel it. Relief. Exhaustion. Something that might have been hope. For the first time in years, I could breathe. The months that followed were quiet in the best way. Ivy adjusted faster than I expected. She loved her new room, her new school, the way our apartment felt calm instead of tense. She still saw her mother, but the visits were supervised, and Vanessa was on her best behavior. At least for now. My sister Leah came over for dinner every Sunday. My parents visited twice a month. I reconnected with friends I'd lost during the marriage, people Vanessa had slowly pushed away. Claire and I stayed in touch. She became a friend, someone who understood the journey without needing it explained. Ivy continued taking ballet lessons, and I never missed a single performance. Vanessa, meanwhile, faced the consequences she'd spent years avoiding. The custody ruling became known in her social circles. Friends who'd only heard her side of the story now questioned everything. Her mother distanced herself, embarrassed by the public exposure. The control Vanessa had wielded so confidently shattered the moment it was documented and displayed in a courtroom. She called me once, 6 months after the hearing. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. "I didn't think it would end like this," she said. Neither did I. I hung up without saying more. Some conversations don't need closure. I still think about Claire's 9 words sometimes. Love should never make you feel this small. They'd been a mirror reflecting something I'd refused to see. One evening, I was sitting on the porch of my apartment while Ivy chased fireflies in the yard. She was laughing, free, unafraid. That was enough. I'd spent 6 years shrinking for someone who never deserved my devotion. Now I was building something new, something honest. The work wasn't finished, but for the first time, it felt like mine.